This is E&P Reports, a vodcast from editor and publisher. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. And this episode sponsored by IQ Audience Plus by Town News. Consumer revenue has never been more important. Digital leaders at media organizations worldwide understand the need to accelerate its growth now. Plus, traditional one-size-fits-all paywalls aren't the answer. They're blunt instruments that treat all visitors the same way. IQ Audience Plus is a smart, dynamic metering solution that empowers media companies to maximize revenue by identifying key audiences, seeding engagement, and growing membership and subscriptions. Supercharge your consumer revenue, grow engagement, and bolster your advertising income now with IQ Audience Plus. Visit townnews.com EP today to learn more. And a warm welcome once again, Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P. Quick housekeeping. If you're listening to my voice on your favorite podcast platform, please follow us right now. Watching the video on our YouTube channel, go to the bottom of the screen, hit that subscribe button, smash the bell to the right, and you will get an update every time we upload a new episode of E&P Reports. The Center for Public Integrity on their website says they're there to inspire change using investigative reporting that reveals the causes and effects of inequality. And their mission is to look at discriminatory systems in employment, housing, healthcare, education, access to democracy, effect based on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, ability, immigration status, and more. And they have a 30-plus year background. Their roots are pre-internet. And their mission is to continue to affect that change through data-driven investigative reporting. Now, many of you know the name Matt D'Arenzio, contributed to E&P for years. He has now moved into CPI, the Center for Public Integrity, as the editor-in-chief. But recently it was announced that the Center for Public Integrity now has a brand new CEO named Paul Chung. Paul's background is mostly on the digital side. And he'll be running this organization, helping it make sure that this content that they're creating is being dispersed to as many different channels as it can to help affect this change in our society. Well, let's join them. Let's learn more about the Center of Public Integrity as we go one-on-two with Paul Chung, the new CEO, and Matt D'Arenzio, editor-in-chief. Matt, Paul, thank you so much for joining us today on E&P Reports. Matt, you're an old friend. You have contributed to E&P. You and I worked together years ago when you were at Journal Register Company.
It's great to see you.
Good to see you finally face to face. Paul, I feel guilty. Before we started the recording, I said, Paul, do you know our magazine? You said, I've been judging your epis for years. Please forgive me, sir. The list is about 35 long. And it's hard to remember every single judge. Thank you. But I'm honored that you're part of our Epi Awards, which close out soon. I want to first talk, though, about the Center for Public Integrity. First of all, gentlemen, I have been in my emails to you calling it CPI. Is that a mistake, or am I allowed to use that initialism for Center for Public Integrity? Matt, is that acceptable or not?
It's fine. Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. All right. Here's what you say on your website. The Center for Public Integrity inspires change using investigative reporting that reveals the causes and effects of inequality, discriminatory systems in employment, housing, healthcare, education, and access to democracy affect people based on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, ability, immigration status, and income. Your data-driven and narrative journalism holds powerful interests accountable. My God, that is quite a statement. Has that always been the mission, Matt, of CPI?
So Public Integrity is like one of the oldest nonprofit investigative outlets in the country. So it's been around like 30 years. I think Center for Investigative Reporting is a couple of years older, but we're one of the originals, and it hasn't always been the mission. So it was a very, very broad-based national scope investigative news outlet that would write about, Medicaid fraud one week, education the next, criminal justice the next. And so about a year and a half ago or so, previous CEO Susan Smith Richardson and the board chose this mission of investigating inequality, focusing in on inequality as the mission. And it actually it allows us to be more specific and have more impact in our work. But it also is recognizing like a fundamental part of this country from the beginning of its history. There's been lots of conversation about history and 1619 Project and critical race theory and stuff like that lately. But inequality touches on every aspect of society. So it's actually, we view it as a pretty broad lane, but that's the mission.
Is the mission, did your board pick inequality so you could, I mean, you guys started in the dark ages, right? Like in print, right? This is before all the digital sites that came along. So is this like your niche, would you say? If someone was to say, what is CPI's core competency, it would now be focusing on equality, correct?
Yeah, I mean, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. I would say, look, CPI is one of the first nonprofit to be found that is not just print. I think it was a sort of like in that transition digital age. So they did a lot of different things back then. They did research reports. They also published, research report. They also did sort of insight briefings with reporters and stuff. So I think, at that point, the founder, Chuck Lewis, really founded CPI on a mission of like, how do we be innovative with the work that we want to do with investigative journalism? And I would say the focus on inequality, I would say that's not technically new either. I mean, so much of what CPI's work had done is holding the powerful accountable. And so much of holding the powerful accountable is because most of the time, the system create these inequities. So I think now we're just calling it what it is.
Which is great.
We're still doing the same thing, but instead of just holding the powerful accountable, we're saying that these people or these systems are creating inequities. But the focusing, I would say, is on the 5 key sort of vertical, which is housing, jobs, education, health, and access to democracy.
And now, Matt, your background is very editorial. I think you said on your LinkedIn profile that you started in journalism in high school and never looked back, right?
Right, basically.
But Paul, you as the new CEO come from a much more digital foundation. I mean, I don't even understand what you did at NBC News. What was your title there? And you were in charge of graphic visualism? I mean, I'm sorry, I got that wrong, but what were you doing at NBC News, sir?
So at NBC, I was there briefly. I was their director of visual journalism.
Wow.
So I was there to help them start a new team that could express visual more visually and more data-centric. And that's a lot of the work that I did at the AP when I was the head of the interactive and digital news production. So, at the AP, I was the one who sort of helped the team move from traditional print graphics into online interactive storytelling. And as I grow, we do all sorts of things from animations to short form video storytelling to social story producing, and to really, I would say, to think about, how the audience are consuming content right now digitally, from their mobile device to their desktop, and what ways we could express journalism and how do we deliver that journalism to them in a way that makes sense for that platform. So I think that's what led me to Knight and ultimately right now to CPI.
So you like to look at the data, right? I mean, but it's not just the journalism, but what they're clicking on, what they're reading, the age, the income, I mean, is this how you're taking a look at CPI now, bringing in all that digital knowledge and making sure that the content you're producing is going to be read by all in all different formats? Is that one of your missions, if I may be so bold, Paul?
Yeah, I would say we want to be more data informed as an organization, right? Because I think without data, then we don't really know the impact that we're making. I think for CPI in particular, so much, our success is really measured by impact, right? We're not NBC News, we're not New York Times, and we don't have the expectation of reaching, the same amount of people as these major media outlet. But what we do is to write stories that could impact changes. And I think, the way we want to measure the impact, we want to understand is who is it that we are reaching? And are the folks that we're reaching be able to make a decision to change an outcome of a system? And who are the other people that could influence these decision makers to create that change? So I think that's why when you read the mission statement, the new sort of mission and focus is focusing on the inspiring change makers.
Interesting. In other words, you want to be read by the influencer who will then spread the word. Is this what I'm hearing, Paul? Is that
kind of beyond influencers? We want to be basically, we want to reach the audience who make decisions about their daily lives, right? Okay. So for example, with a lot of the great health coverage that we've been doing about COVID, like when we think about who are the people in your household that decide, let's go get a COVID test, let's go get our family vaccinated. Those are the people that we want to reach. And then who are the people who basically tell the community, hey, there's vaccine inaccuracy, there are misinformation in our community. Where could you get reliable, testing? Who are these sort of community leaders that are helping do the work, and where are they getting that information? And then one notch up is who are the policy makers, who are the health care providers that are also help informing and engaging the community. So when we think about where our content needs to go, we want to be focused in terms of, how does our content help people make, their day-to-day decisions, but who are all the different decision makers from someone in your household all the way up to the government?
You're really, okay. And then your hope is that the story not only gets read by that decision maker, but the media company that decision maker consumes? I mean, is your goal to get picked up or have that decision maker themselves read it right off of your own platform? Or is it a little bit of both?
It's a little bit both. Matt, you want to talk more about the partnerships that we have?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit of both. And so like when you, the way that you define decision maker or people who affect decisions, that's the person organizing in a community in in a neighborhood in Cincinnati or in Manhattan or in the Bronx. It's not just someone on a congressional staff, in DC, right?
Right.
And so one of the you alluded to when we were founded in the dark ages and stuff like that, in pre-digital, we were founded like without a print edition, like a traditional media outlet, but also kind of pre-widespread digital. So like DNA, the collaboration with other media outlets has always been in our DNA.
Right.
Produce a story, and then you'd read it in the Washington Post or the USA Today or something like that. And so, Paul, I think we were sharing a list the other day of like all of the people that we've partnered with in the past 2 years, and it's 40, 50 different news organizations, right? And increasingly, that focus is on local news organizations, particularly local news organizations led by or serving people of color, which is, on so much of the topics about inequality that we're writing on, those are the people on the ground who are making the difference on those topics, and they are the change makers. And so we're doing a ton of that, and we're a traditional strength of ours is data journalism, for example. So we might spend a lot of effort and put a lot of resources into creating a national data set that didn't exist before that tells a story about inequality. And then we're doing things like sharing that data ahead of time with local news organizations so that when we come out with our national story, we're also fueling tons of local reporting in individual communities.
That was going to be my next question. Yeah. This has got to be a partnership that's very symbiotic in two directions, correct? Because these data sets you're looking for are data. A lot of that's accumulated by a local media outlet. Am I correct?
Well, so one of the things that's fascinating about the inequality topic is and data journalism for us, and this is like Paul said, like it's not new. We've always done journalists have always done this kind of thing. You look at, for example, Washington Post a couple of years ago counted police-involved shootings and police violence, and they needed to do that because the FBI law enforcement wasn't doing it. Government has a vested interest not to count the things that hold itself accountable, right? And so, so that's the big role that we can play. And when we can have that kind of impact and scaling that journalism on a local level, that's the most exciting thing for me. And also it helps us, you're a follower of the industry, Mike, and there's been all kinds of cohorts that have been set up and programs set up on business model stuff over the past couple of years. And that's having a great impact on or an emerging impact on media and communities of color. I think that we can have a similar impact, or I hope to, on improving investigative reporting and spreading investigative reporting at that local level.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would add, Mike, is CPI always have a history of partnering, sort of like partnering with people to distribute content, but because of digital, now we have different ways of distribution, right? So I would say
correct, yeah.
We're still, doing a majority of our content is a majority of people reading CPI content, they may not even realize it's CPI content, right? So there's the text portion. People could be using the data that we are building, and then they might customize a local story based on that, right? So that's sort of like I would say, majority of work. But increasingly, we're also thinking about our own distribution platform. Like, how do we make sure that people subscribe to our newsletters? How do we interact with these change maker and our audience through social? And each social platform will have something different, right? Because as we know, the audience that are consuming content in Twitter is different than the ones from Facebook or Instagram. So I think, what digital had allowed us to do is for the public to get to know who we are.
Well, there you go. And you even launched a podcast last year. You call it The Heist. That is an interesting name. Where did that come from, Matt, if I may ask?
So this podcast covers the super sexy topic of the 2017 tax bill.
There you go. So, all right, there you go. Which is on the top of everyone's mind. Go
so I'm being a little facetious, but I'm not. I think what we did is we successfully turned it into, it's a pretty compelling story, because it was a massive, massive transfer of wealth from the middle class to big corporations and a handful of billionaires, And so the heist refers to how a small group of lobbyists and lawmakers pulled that off. And even though it was, if you poll like the merits of the policy change, it's not popular, right? But they pulled it off because they had, and this has been a traditional it was based on a couple of years of public integrity reporting, text reporting, and it turned it into a competitive, great audio storytelling project that made that whole topic understandable to the average person, but also didn't kind of talk down to people who were pretty expert in it. So I thought I was really proud. We were really proud of it.
Well, you must also have gotten some people really angry when you dived into that topic as well. But isn't that what it's all about, right? I mean,
right.
That old expression, we had someone I interviewed from a small market recently said, when I'm standing in a line at Wendy's and the guy in front of me likes me and the guy behind me hates me, I'm doing my job. If neither of them heard of me, I'm not doing my job. So I assume that but this is a fascinating, that one topic alone launched this podcast series.
Well, so but it's a good example of audio being just one piece of a way to tell our story that we haven't in the past. We recently, here's a dynamic. We specialize in very deep dive investigative reporting. So 5,000 word text pieces, right?
Right.
When you look at how many people read all the way through a 5,000 word text piece, whether it's us or someone else, it's man.
I know.
And so we just launched, it was the brainchild of Kimberly Catadella, one of our staffers. We just launched a program where we hire voice specialists, voice actors to read our longer form stuff. So you can get a podcast feed of our stories written by someone who can pronounce all the names right, and it sounds good. And so it's a great thing to do when you're running or walking or something like that, when you might not have had the chance to sit down with a 5,000 word piece.
And you don't do the new audio thing that everybody's peddling, where you have a mechanical voice that tries to sound human. I mean, you're hiring a Shakespearean actor here who can do it in any.
Well, it's important for us that and we're doing Spanish language versions of many of them too. And
great, good.
The pronunciations are right, and that it doesn't turn people off,
And that's amazing. That's the
go
ahead, Paul. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I said that's the best part about being a place like CPI, because we are not locked in by any format or tradition, because we were founded to sort of break the mold. Again, in the quote of the founder, Chuck Lewis, he say, when others zig, we zag. And so to me, that's a lot of latitude in terms of how we want to zag. right? So I think it just means that, you know, I think that ethos of innovation was really attractive to me. Is we're not here supporting a print product or broadcast product. We're here to support investigative journalism to, you know, to investigate the cause and effects of inequality in whatever format that we deem necessary.
Okay, so the result is the change, regardless whether it's print, digital, social, audio, language, whatever. You want to be the change agent, and you start from the problem, how you're going to create the change, and then you find the message in whatever platform. I get that. How big is this company, and how the heck do you pay for it? Where's your financing coming from? Where's your money coming from?
Well, we're relatively small right now. So I would say, like many other nonprofit, we're mostly supported by philanthropy, national philanthropy. But we're also thinking about ways that we are working with donors directly. So we're going to start thinking about, you know, again, you know, what does a individual membership program look like? And we're also thinking about, you know, future of events and also new products, stuff like podcasts, right? Like, you know, what are the sort of sponsorship opportunities do we have as we are thinking about different ways of creating new distribution?
But your partners, your news outlets that you work with don't pay you for the privilege to access your data, correct? Matt?
Correct.
Okay. It's just a partnership. So you create the data, you create the content, you share it, and you're not charging them for the privilege, right, Matt? That's
traditionally, yeah.
Traditionally, okay. But you could find sponsors. I have to ask the question, Paul, will you chase Google and Facebook money, or is that none of my business, sir?
I mean, okay. So when we say Google and Facebook, like these are sort of mega sort of technology companies, and each one of them will have, you know, the Google News Initiative definitely had done a lot for the journalism initiative, as well as the Facebook Accelerator program. So I think, you know, if there's an opportunity that fits into our mission and our policy, then yeah, we will be having conversations with them. And we have worked with Google in the past, especially, you know, Matt, maybe, you know, you could talk more about it. I think we have done work with them.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Before CPI and now, I've been involved with Facebook's and Google's journalism programs in various capacities. And at CPI, we worked with Google to partner some of the to test some of the tools that they're building that are great for data journalism. That's kind of an ongoing thing. So
I urge everyone who's listening to this broadcast to go to publicintegrity.org and then /about/awards. I went through your awards page. Is there any award you have not won? That's my first question.
Yeah,
I have never.
An Oscar.
Which one?
An Oscar.
We're not EGOT yet, right? No Tony Award. It's unfathomable. Of course, an Epi. Thank you for mentioning us. The 2019, you guys won an Epi. But I have never, ever seen a list like this. And it's amazing how much and it's sometimes the collaboration with someone else, right? But you're working in together. But if this is any credit to the quality of your journalism, I got to say that you're getting recognized all over the place. Is this just something that happens naturally? Did it speed up later on? Is it one of your, I guess I have to ask, is this one of your litmus tests to make sure, or is it just something that you're proud of? What do you think, Matt? Well, we're certainly proud of it. I think there's a long tradition of really talented people coming to public integrity at various stages of their career, right? And you look at public integrity alum, they're everywhere at the biggest and most prestigious outlets. It's partly a product of how Chuck Lewis founded it in the first place, which was when other people, as Paul said, like when other people were zigging, we were zagging. We were not like focused on the daily news cycle and on that hamster wheel. And that allows us time to go deeper and different than other people and look at stuff from a standpoint of we're not going to do it unless it has some major impact. You know?
Paul, I want to swing the conversation to you because one of the reasons we're doing this interview is, oh, by the way, congratulations on the new gig, Paul. How long have you been CEO now? as,
1 week.
there you go. And you got to relocate from Miami to DC. Well, you're used to bad traffic anyway. So, but let me ask you this: is there a story behind you in how your family came? You said you were born in Hong Kong, correct? And is there something in your background that compels you to want to take on issues like this of equality and diversity?
Yeah, I mean, look, my parents, when I think about, the stories of inequality and especially ones in America, is I feel like this is something that every single immigrant relates to. My parents, their family was so poor that they couldn't even graduate from high school in Asia, in China, and they have to work at a very young age. Somehow they made it over to the US and started their own business. And I could see sort of like, because of the language barrier, because the way the systems is created, how they were being treated. People look at them like they were stupid or they were idiotic. And the worst thing is, like, I know they know how people are looking at them, but they're not. If they are truly idiotic or stupid, they wouldn't be able to support me and my sister to go to university. They wouldn't be able to have a sustainable small business of their own without any banking support or anything, because those were just not made available for them, right? They just don't, the system does not favor people who don't speak English. The system does not offer loans to immigrant who doesn't have, already a good amount of asset, right? So they were being really scrappy. So when I think about the mission of CPI and I look back to my family, think about how many more families in America that are facing the same way, and not just people of color, right? We're talking about folks who are also in sort of historically underserved community, the rural community. If you're a veteran, I mean, these stories are not atypical, at least for folks like me, but I could also imagine these are sort of typical experience where many other Americans face on a regular basis.
Got to ask. I mean, one of the things I spent 20 years as a newspaper consultant on the business side, not on the, and Matt knows that, because when I came into his facility at Journal Register, I was there to help generate digital revenue and help, change the culture. But I traveled around the world. I've worked Asia, I've worked Russia, worked China, worked all over Europe, and I did a tour through South America. I mean, in the 20 years, people may dislike our politics at times in other countries, but everybody wanted to come here. This is at least my perception. Your parents struggled to come to this country and build a life. Do you believe in the American dream now? I have to ask this, with the last 4 years of politics that have gone on, the problems we're having now with fake news, and more importantly, sir, and if you don't like this question, I can edit it out. Don't worry, because this is being recorded.
No, here's the truth is, regardless of what the politics of the moment is, my parents give up everything they knew from, they came to a country where they don't know anyone, they don't know the culture, and they didn't do it for them. They do it so that I could be in position to have a future like I'm one today. I could not imagine I would be able to become a CEO of a media company if I were to be in Asia. Now, here's a little bit backstory. When I was really young, I was really bad with my grades. So in Hong Kong, they already rank you in the first grade. They rank you in your class from 1 to whatever number they have. So in my class, with 45 students, and consistently from first, second grade, there was about 45 kids. The best I ever did was 40 out of 45. There's no way I would survive that system had I been in Asia. But in America, while the system is not always equal, there are opportunities in ways that I couldn't imagine before. So yes, I still believe in the American dream, and in some ways I'm living it, and I'm living it because my parents have to sacrifice their dream.
And now you're the CEO that's able to pull levers that not only at your own media company, but that influence media companies of all shapes and sizes, and some of the most important and compelling topics in our society today. Matt, how did it feel to have a nerd come in and run the company? You were there before. No, I'm serious, because your journalism background, I'm sure people go there. I mean, but I got to say this. Paul, your background, it's not just nerdy, but that was your expertise. I mean, but the Online News Association, you ran that for a while, correct? And
no, not ONA, the Asian American Journalists Association.
Okay, excuse me. Okay, that I knew it was one of them. But you have journalism, and there's some journalism in you, but you were always on the geeky and nerdy side. Matt, how did you're a legacy company, right? Your background was pre-internet. How was this tough for this team, or was it kind of fun to see this change and transition, this new world?
I think it's been exciting, and it's happening at a really critical time. Mike, you've been around long enough that we both have seen the speculation and the frustration about people talking about, like, when will the digital people be in charge, right? The quote unquote digital people, right? And everybody kind of recognizing, like, it can't, especially with business model, upheaval and stuff like that, you can't figure this out without that expertise and that knowledge and the real understanding. And so it's like happening at a critical time for us, because there's a really, really important thing to the journalism, which is, who are we writing for and why, and what is the impact that's going to have? Well, and that's where I think Paul's background, both from a personal standpoint and a professional standpoint, hits all of the right notes for the moment that we're in, and would anyway. It would have 10 years ago too. We just weren't probably farsighted enough to see it.
No, you're preaching to the choir in that one, because the first thing I did when I took the reins, I don't even consider myself running EMP. I feel I'm just a steward that's going to help it. I want to make this brand continue for another 100 years. But the first thing I did was look at how the delivery was and change it up. You know what I mean? Get it, launch that app, get that podcast out, do everything we can to have, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but you live this in many different media worlds. If you're writing a story that no one reads, you got a billboard in your basement. Am I right? I mean, that's it. I mean, what's the use? So, Paul, this is going to be interesting to watch the DNA shift a little here, or maybe it's already moving in that direction, and you're just helping to push it forward. So now I need to ask this of you, Paul. You're now taking over in a I don't even want to say post-pandemic. I want to say in a pandemic world. The good news is, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, at least what we're reporting at ENP is there's more of an appetite now for local news than there's ever been in the history, right? Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, I know you're a data guy, but a crisis accelerates change, and people now appreciate local news more than ever. How does that make you look towards the next 5 years at CPI, sir?
I think, again, what attracted me to CPI was not only the mission, but in terms of where they at sort of like mentally, right? I think with Matt coming on board, like I say, the journalism of CPI had always been top notch. And that's not the issue we have here. The issue we have at CPI is really thinking about what is the appropriate business and technical infrastructure that could help that journalism thrive even better.
There you go. Right.
And, when I think about where the pandemic can accelerate, it accelerates the way we consume content again, right? So think about, at the comfort of your home, like, there's a reason why podcasting is proliferating, right? Because you're home, you might be tied to your computer, and you might not just want to watch another video, right? But with audio is a way to sort of unplug yourself visually, right? So I think right now, the next 5 years, there's a lot of opportunity for us to really grow and to be creative and to really rethink, what investigative journalism can be, right? I could just imagine the heist becoming also something like, would people be interested in watching a Netflix series about the heist? I don't know, but we have an opportunity to explore, right? And so, I just think together with Matt and the team that we have a perfect opportunity to shape that future together. And I would say the other thing that's great about CPI is we're not like ginormous in terms of staffing, right? We're at that right size that we could actually be super agile is almost like a startup team that we have. And the canvas is still very much blank. But the difference between us and a startup is we already have that credibility.
Right.
We already know what the mission is. And we already have that reputation of getting the job done through the many awards, right? So I think in some way we have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I would say that what you're doing is you're making the 3.0, the 4.0, right? Or the 5.0 of an amazing product. I want to thank both your gentlemen for your valuable time. I know you're busy, and Paul, you're still trying to find where the bathroom is, I'm sure, in your first week. But
with Zoom, my bathroom just around the corner from my apartment.
I assume eventually you guys will all meet up in an office someday and work together. But if someone wants to learn more, subscribe to that newsletter. Find the Heist in an easier way. I'm sure they can always just download it on their favorite podcast platform. Matt, direct us to where anybody in the industry can go to learn more about PCI.
Yep. So if you go to publicintegrity.org and click on newsletter or subscribe, that's probably the best way, and you'll hear about Heist Season 2 coming up, and be able to sign up to get notified of all of our stuff. Yeah.
If anybody wants to suggest a topic, Paul, they think you're not, someone is covering a beat right now or chasing a story in their market, and they'd like to collaborate with you, is that something that you'd be welcome to, sir?
Oh, not just me. I mean, there's me, Matt, and the executive team. And I would say we're so easy to find on social. I don't think finding me or giving me some feedback would be hard, whether it's like a Twitter DM or like a LinkedIn message or just even my email. So I would welcome anyone who have any thoughts or how we could, again, grow the organization or partner with the organization in ways that we haven't imagined before.
There you go. Matt, Paul, thanks for your time. Stay healthy, stay well, keep doing a great job. And we really, really, really appreciate the fact that you're chasing those stories and making sure that change happens. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mike. Great to see you again.
Thank you.